All right, so moving on to the next slide. New covenant talks about this in verse 11. It says, But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things to come, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation. So Christ is our new high priest. He is our new covenant. He is a high priest of the things to come. He entered the greater and more perfect tabernacle. We are the tabernacle. He calls us greater and more perfect than any actual building that existed. And it's not made with hands, it's to say, not of this creation. It's of his creation. Not our creation, his creation. Moving on to verse 12. And not through the blood of goats and calves, but through his own blood, Jesus Christ's own blood, he entered the holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. Eternal redemption. The high priest had to go in once a year. All right? And it would be a permanent, or not a permanent, a temporary sacrifice. He had to keep doing it. Right? Jesus Christ made an eternal sacrifice, an eternal redemption. Redemption is a theological term that shows up in the Bible. It basically means buying something back. All right? Not purchasing it originally, but buying something back. All right? So it'd be like if, you sold your car to somebody, and you're like, you know what, I really want that car back. And so you go and you buy it back. That's a purchasing. We were originally Christ. Christ created us for him. Right? He created humanity to glorify him, and then we kind of messed it up. And so he bought us back through redemption, through the cross. And again, all this will come together. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one, verse 13. It says, For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling those who have been defiled, sanctify for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? All right? So the blood of animals, again, it was defiled. It was symbolic. It wasn't really the blood that sanctified us. But the perfect blood of Christ really did make us holy. His sacrifice was legitimate. His sacrifice was perfect. It was more than a symbol. It was reality. His blood was what made us holy, if we choose to accept that. So we have all these contrasts here. We had the defiled blood of animals contrast with the perfect blood of Christ. Now you kind of see why he's saying, the author of Hebrews, that the new covenant is so much better. The way of Christ is so much better than anything we could have previously had under the old covenant. Moving on to the next verse. We have the perfect blood of Christ here. And the perfect blood of Christ, again, is something that we cannot come up with ourselves. None of us can make our own sacrifice for the perfect blood of Christ, because he's the only perfect one. He was the only one who was born without original sin. He was the only one who was born who did not sin his entire life. His blood was the only one that was perfect. If we tried to say, oh, well, I'll get Matt to go and die for my sins. Thanks, Matt. It wouldn't work, because Matt has original sin. It'd just be like taking an animal and saying, well, I'll make this animal cover my sins, but the animal's not perfect. Not comparing you to an animal, man. All right? Yeah. Let's go. Okay. Anyway, the point is that the perfect blood of Christ, it's the only way it could have been accomplished. Sometimes people ask, well, did God really have to send Jesus to die? Yeah, he did. Because without it, there would have been no other forgiveness of sins. It was the only way. Because without any type of sacrifice, we would not be able to be made holy. We would not be able to exist with God in heaven. Going on to the next slide. In verse 15, it says, For this reason, he is the mediator of a new covenant. Now we have our new covenant. So that since a death has taken place for the redemption of the transgressions that were committed, we have that term again, redemption, under the first covenant, those who have been called away may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. All right? So it covers the blood of all believers' sins. All right? And it's interesting here to note that it says, for those who have been called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. All right? So anybody who claims allegiance to Jesus Christ, who believes in their heart of hearts that Jesus Christ is Lord, desires to serve him with their life, Jesus Christ's blood has covered their sin. Their sin past, their sin present, their sin future. He has covered it. All right? It's a blanket forgiveness of all sins here, now, and later. Going on to verse 16. For where a covenant is made, there must of necessity be the death of the one who made it. Jesus Christ was the one who made this new covenant. All right? And again, remember, this is a type of redemption. All right? So Jesus Christ was saying, you know what? I want to purchase back my people. I want to purchase back humanity. All right? But a price had to be paid. You know, he couldn't just go ahead and say, you know what? Forget this. I'm just going to make them holy, because there had to be a price. And he paid that price through the death of Jesus Christ. Continues this in verse 17. For a covenant is valid only when men are dead, for it is never enforced while the one who made it lives. All right? So even while Jesus Christ was living, the covenant was still under the old covenant. All right? It wasn't until his death that the new covenant was made. His old death, or the old covenant rather, was something that was symbolic. So it wasn't just that Jesus Christ appeared on earth and lived a perfect life. That wasn't enough. That was just setting up him being the perfect sacrifice, him being able to claim that perfection, him being able to use that perfect blood for the forgiveness of our sins.